Well, Volya Radio listeners, it's good to have you here. We're here to talk about Ukraine and how they're doing and help them as much as we can. And today we'll be speaking with Decoding and the sort of the same schedule as usual. Wendy, I see you're a co-host. I think I'm finally a co-host, so I believe we're ready to go. And except for the timestamp, we can dive into things. So right now it is. Go ahead.
Just wanted to say good morning and welcome Decoding and everybody else who's here. I see Karen and Yenny and Charlene. Hi there. And go ahead and do the timestamp.
Okay, let's see here. On the East Coast of the United States, it is 10:30 in the morning, and it is a beautiful morning here. And in other places around the world, we won't do anything too extensive here, but it is in the, pardon me, while I get there. Yep, yes, it is in Britain. It is 15:30 hours, and in Kyiv it is 17:30. So there we go. Simple timestamp. None of the fun that we get from our lovely co-host Heather, but we're done with it. So, and Decoding, I see you're now a speaker. Welcome very much. And I put some thought to that character from last week and looked at some of his pictures and things like that. And oh my, pretty scary stuff when you combine the fact that there are now a lot of people who are looking for ancient solutions to their problems, hoping that some sort of mystical ceremony will take care of the missing gasoline. Anyway, welcome.
Welcome to you, James, and Wendy, and Yenny, and Ming. Charlene, hi, Karen. Hi, Scandinavia. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you for being here. I've been thinking about anticipating this all week. I have a treat in store for you today, for those of us who listen to Volya a lot. And I also have another treat for people, even if people who don't, which is to continuing the Dugan book, Outflank Dugan, Don't Rebut, which is the method. So yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Excellent. I'll just get my ducks in a row. So brilliant. So I mentioned before Christmas and then the early part of the year that I am training a neural network algorithm to create training data sets for a local large language model to automate the interpretation of disinfolklore and infolore and neutral. And I have been working extremely hard on this for the past 6 months and have made amazing progress. And one of the challenges of doing this is we are swimming in disinfolklore. And there's quite a big lack of infolklore. And I developed both these concepts first. Most of us here listening here were even here in the Maria report days and have watched or probably haven't watched at all. But anyway, while you weren't watching, I was developing these ideas on the basis of the material that most of us were looking at each day. And so I managed to convince the frontier neural network algorithm that I'm working with that the one piece of infolklore we could come across was basically another friend of the show, John Spencer, wrote in this very for the War College the definitive account. He jointly authored it for the battle for Kyiv. In 9,000 word document. And having tried so many different texts and types of texts and Telegram channels and all sorts of stuff with my frontier model, the moment I fed it this text, it immediately lit up and felt that this best matched the idea of infolklore. And then I had another clue for what to train it on for infolklore, which is this amazing channel which still exists now, RIA Melitopol, or now it's called RIA Pivden, and it works out of Zaporizhia city while Melitopol is temporarily occupied. And then the third source was Volya, and in particular Will and Mockers, just because of their particular method, in particular Mockers, who wears her archetype on her moniker, Mockers. And that aspect of infolklore with her little moral intercessions, well, that'll teach you to basically invade another country, invade Ukraine. So it's the complete opposite of the disinfolklore, which is we're going to kill you all, basically, and everything we hear from Strelkov. And so this week I recorded one, a couple of weeks ago. I thought, wait, why don't I just record this particular Volya show, which was the one that I think it's Tankerfellow, and it was perfect because he was describing the whole history of the Illumina campaign, and I'm not really going to talk about that campaign, but really this whole pattern which he was describing of a small group of people moving together to create a great campaign that then moves monsters. That pattern, the Trita pattern, is something which I'll be talking about later in the Dugan book, and some of you will remember I've talked about Trita before, because most of us in the Ukraine pro-Ukraine space, we have an archetypal model of how the world works, and it works by the small person can be victorious. There's another type of pattern, which is the Vritra pattern, which is the snake or the serpent who keeps the waters back and always wins. And this particular pattern is in every Indo-European culture, every Indo-European language culture. It's in Celtic, it's in Armenian, it's in Iranian, Indic, it's in England, St. George and the Dragon, and sometimes they're called Trita, particularly in India and in Iran. And every Hollywood ending that is a happy ending. That's the Trita pattern working out. And it's not mysterious. You don't have to have read about Trita or understood this. You just have a particular pattern. We have these patterns in our minds. And most of us on the Ukraine, pro-Ukraine side, from the very beginning, we recognized Ukraine was going to win because there's no other choice. It's just the world doesn't work. There is not a world in which Russia wins. And our certainty about this throughout the long struggle can be elucidated when one reads about the Trita pattern. And I only came across this from one of the foremost Indo-European specialists, Bruce Lincoln, while I was researching disinfolklore and stuff. And so I'm just going to read an analysis of what Tankerfellow and everyone on that show was doing that particular day. So on day one of the full-scale invasion, one man posted one question. Why is our country still shipping Illumina to Russia when there's a war on? Nobody important answered him. He just tweeted, like all of us, just small people, Trita, without huge followings. We just tweet into the blackness. 3 years later, there was an investigative journalist on the story, more than 30 MEPs signing declarations, a government investigation, and a vote in the European Parliament. And a couple of weeks ago, this show told the story in its own words. And the first line of the episode was the best summary anyone could write. It's amazing what regular people can do, isn't it? That was Tankerfellow's opener. And the moment I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. I'm going to now get a perfect case study in archetypal infolklore. And I want to do something a little different with this particular part of the show today. So all of you know I study wartime stories. as all of us do. We've become experts in it. I had to laugh this week when mockers, every now and again, poor old Firefella is activated from playing with his cat or doing what he's doing. And mockers chimes in and says, did you see that? It was a particular explosion. It was a particularly random explosion somewhere. And Tankafella had. And he was able to describe it immediately. And this is the kind of knowledge which, most of our friends in the real world would balk at. They have no idea any of this is going on. So we all study these stories in the form of videos, films. We've just got this all of this knowledge going around, which we talk about every day, and we listen every day when we wake up. And as you know, I've been spent years building a method for reading these stories. First in Eastern Ukraine, in the propaganda that flooded Stanitsa Luhanska from 2015 onwards, where I first spotted what I call disinfolklore, this narrative form in which meanness is communicated directly into people's minds, and which affects their intentions, their motivations, and their attitudes and their moods, importantly their moods, without us even knowing. That's disinfolklore. And now more widely. So the method has a simple engine, 2 acts of naming. The first act, name the story, not the topic, the story. Wartime information runs on story patterns that are far older than any of us. Some of them are older than writing. When you name the pattern correctly, the noise drops away and you can see what the piece of content is actually doing. The second act, proof it. Take the conduct the story carries and hold it against the standard our grandparents wrote down after 1945, the UN Charter, the conventions, the European Convention on Human Rights, the Genocide Convention, all those various conventions, the Law of the Sea, the Laws of War, the Geneva Conventions, 1949. Story plus standard gives you a verdict. So when I'm teaching a computer to do this automatically, I need a structure which the computer can understand. And it loves this structure which I give it. And either the tail feeds the well we all drink from, and I call it infolklore, or it poisons the well, and I call that disinfolklore. Or it is neither, and the method says so and moves on. So here in this show that Tankafella started, just one second, with those 2 acts of naming on the Volya show, let's see what it hears. So start with the Illumina story, because it fits one of the oldest patterns we have. In the Rig Veda, the oldest long text in our whole language family, written down first around 1100 BCE, but communicated and transmitted for centuries before that, verbatim through the great poets, the Brahmines. There's a serpent called Vritra. His name means the coverer. He coils around the waters and holds them back. The rivers stop. The world dries. He produces nothing. He only withholds. Against him, the tradition sets a hero. The oldest layer of the story, that hero is Trita, which simply means third, after Manu, human, Yama, twin, and then third brother, the younger one, the one nobody bet on. He has no army, he frees the waters anyway, and the rivers run. The 7 rivers of ancient India run. Now listen to the campaign story again. A flow that should move was being held. Not the Illumina, that flowed freely, too freely. What was being held back was the truth about where it went, and the sanction that the truth demanded. Around the flow sat a coil of reassurances. Don't worry, it's only for tin cans. Don't touch it, the jobs. There's an investigation. Wait for the investigation. 100 days and counting. That is the Vritra conduct. Nothing created, everything covered. Then the third brother turns up. 1 tanker watcher with a tweet, then a website, then a handful of listeners, then mockers and her enthusiasm for this campaign from the very beginning, then journalists, the Irish Times and the OCCRP, who found the receiving smelters military contracts, then the public lobbying register, which anyone can read at lobbying.ie, and which showed the scale of the pressure from the other side, then 30 MEPs. You called your own method polite persistence. I cannot improve on that name. It is exactly how the third brother fights. He does not become a serpent to beat a serpent. He keeps asking for the waters until the waters move. That was the first act of naming. The pattern is Trita against Vritra. Now the second act, proof it against the standard. This is where the campaign shines, and I don't think we even notice this ourselves while it's going on. Someone said on air, you have to have a solid argument. You have to base it on facts. That's the first mark of the bright side. Fabrication is the serpent's tool, never the third brother's. The second element in the Code of Positive Trolls is ethical discipline. We don't get anywhere by lying or being deceptive. And then somebody in the community pointed the campaign at the Genocide Convention. I think that was Heather's. I think she suggested that to mockers. Great suggestion. Heather, as ever, behind the scenes. Great interjection today about mockers' cat going out and eating food elsewhere. But anyway, the duty of every country to prevent genocide as soon as it becomes aware it is involved. Stop and look what happened there. Group of ordinary listeners reached on a medium that most of our friends in the real world don't even know exists. Just the idea of this, it doesn't even exist in most people's minds. It's hard to explain it to them. And a group of ordinary listeners and participants reached for the post-1945 legal order as their spine. Not for a conspiracy theory, not for rage, but the charter world our grandparents built. In my method, the post-World War II legal order, as many of you will know, because I've been banging on about it since I first discovered Maria in September 2022. In my method, that is precisely what separates the two kinds of story, infolklore from disinfolklore. The verdict writes itself. This is in folklore, and it is anchor grade in folklore. There was one more line in that whole segment that I think bears repeating. You don't need to be well-funded. You don't need a big lobby group. You just need people. The old Indo-European world had a word for the power that gathers in a community when it acts rightly. Our cousins in the Pacific still use it, mana. That sentence is what mana sounds like in an Irish accent. Inside the campaign story sat a smaller, nastier pattern, and the show displayed it perfectly. The jobs line, touch this export, the jobs are at risk. Every folklore tradition in Europe knows this figure. It's the troll under the bridge. He doesn't own the bridge. He did not build it. He just sits at the crossing and demands a toll. The toll here was silence. Leave the export alone, or your neighbours will lose their livelihoods. The method asks one question of every toll. Is it fair? This one wasn't, because the price demanded was complicity in supplying a war economy. And that is a price the post-1945 standard forbids anyone to charge. So the toll fails that proof. Notice how Volya answered it, not by shouting, by facts again. Over half the output going to a single buyer whose war economy must eventually collapse. Guinea planning its own refineries upstream. Dell leaving Limerick overnight in 2009 because somewhere else was cheaper. In other words, the real threat to those jobs is dependency itself. You don't pay the toll. You show the bridge crossers the toll is a lie. Now the moment in the episode which delighted me most, and it lasted no more than a minute. One of the tanker watchers described something he had noticed across many strikes on Shadow Fleet tankers. The Ukrainians always leave the light boat untouched, the bright orange boat and its launch ramp, always clear so the crew can get off. Then he named the standard. This is Will, I think. They know how to respect international law and the law of the sea. Then Will gave his verdict. Good on them. He said, all this about ships that are actively helping the Russian war effort, and he praised the restraint anyway. And that's my entire disinfolklore method, performed by instinct, by non-lawyers, live on air, by someone who has probably never read any of my work. Name the conduct, proof it against the law, give the verdict, even when the target is your enemy's shipping. Especially then, Ukraine's discipline is a story that feeds the well. Will's telling of it feeds the well twice. And two quick ones from the Russian side of the episode, because the show handled both correctly. Soliloloyoyoyoy complained that Ukrainian strikes had plunged the Russian population into hysteria. And Mockers caught the trick immediately. He doesn't care that Russia has done exactly this to Ukrainian families for years. The old name for this move is accusation in a mirror. You charge your victim with your own crime. It is one of the most dangerous patterns in the whole catalogue because it's how atrocities get pre-justified. The counter is exactly what the show did. Hold up the mirror's frame and say plainly whose reflection is in it. Then Putler's fuel meeting. He insisted there is no fuel crisis, then spent an hour ordering people to fix it. Meanwhile, veterans in one district were promised a one-time bonus of 10,000 rubles, and the payment was cancelled because there was no money in the budget. Wartime Russia runs on a story pattern I call the merciful sovereign. The ruler whose care for his people is boundless and whose word makes things so. Like in all the fairy tales we read, our children had, if we were lucky enough to have parents to do this for us, read them to us. Or the Disney films we saw. An empty shelf refutes Putler better than any editorial. Mercy that exists only on Veterans Day posters is not mercy. A sovereign who denies the crisis he is commanding people to fix is not a sovereign over very much. The show put the two images side by side and let them detonate. That's the right craft. A method that only ever convicts the other side is not a method. It's a mirror of our own. So here is the one moment where my instrument declines to bless us. Talking about politicians who abstained, the show wondered aloud, were there Russian threats? The question stayed a question. But listen to the shape of the move. Loud support proves a guilty conscience. That reasoning can never be falsified. I have a corpus of 10,000 propaganda items from occupied Luhansk, and that shape is in every single one of them. So the method's verdict on that minute of the show was not poison, nothing fabricated, but not the bright side either, unproven, neutral. So I set it down and returned to the facts, which were doing all the work anyway. The abstention record is public. The lobbying register is public. The waters move on facts. I flagged this precisely because the rest of the episode proofs so well. The verdicts on the campaign, the lifeboats, the mirror, those are worth something because this one is not free. And one last thing which it did, it left most of it alone. Elmo the cat coming through the cat flap is not in folklore or disinfolklore. He's a cat. The lifeboat ride story, the coffee, the banter between friends, the instrument reads all of that as neutral and passes over it in silence. A method that codes everything is not an instrument, it's a hammer. The silences are how you know that the verdicts are real. So that is what the two acts of naming heard in one ordinary episode, hundreds of which have been produced. A 3,000-year-old serpent story enacted and won by regular people, a troll's toll refused with facts, the law of the sea applied on instinct, a mirror caught mid-trick, a sovereign's mercy weighed against an empty shelf, one caution for our own side, and a cat. And here's what I'd love to do next, is look more closely at the archive and episode by episode and parse it exactly like that. The bright side stories in these recordings, the ones that proof clean against the standard, are really precious. They are the material we need to teach both people and machines to tell the two wells apart. And clean examples of the bright well are far rarer than you would think. We've spent months going through every kind of text, from Sherlock Holmes to, Ming will appreciate this, P.G. Wodehouse, and none of it passes muster. Whereas in that one show, where the archetype is enacted, not narrated, there was at least 45 to 60 codable units. And in a previous show, which I fed in, some of you might remember this because it was a classic. It was when that Russian guy, one of those generals, he was shot. I don't think he died, in the lift visiting his mistress. And Will was telling the tale, and he just interjected, I mean, you could say he died of, at that time we thought he was dead, you could say he died of a lack of family values. And that was perfect wrapping in folklore, wrapping for what we do. And that is what Volya does every day, and what all of you do, and me to a very small, reading a small extent. So here was another episode which I did. So this is a proverb our two warring neighbors share. Each of us, some of you remember this because it's only a couple of days ago. I think Yenny was definitely there. Each of us is a drop in the ocean. In Russia, it means I am significant. I can do nothing. In Ukraine, as the Magyar's Bird team put it on their page last week, and as Volya read out in air, it means the opposite. Together we make millions of drops. We are the ocean. Same words, same image, two entirely different spells cast with us. In Russia, this means I am insignificant. In Ukraine, it means together we make millions of drops. We are the ocean. Last time I just talked about that, the Illumina campaign, and then the two acts of naming, the first name the story pattern, then proof it. The tale either feeds the well we all drink from, which I call infolklore, or it poisons it, which I call disinfolklore, or it's neither. It's about Elmo, and the method says so. So most wartime stories come at us alone. You have to reconstruct them from, sorry, one sec. Just one second. I've just, speaking of cats, I've got an Elmo situation going on myself. It's getting resolved. Sorry about that. So most wartime stories come at us alone, and we have to reconstruct what the bright vision or the dark version would have looked like. Here, the two versions arrive side by side in the same 9 words. The Russians casting installs powerlessness. You are a drop, so stay home, pay your taxes, look away. Look away from the window when the refinery burns. The Ukrainian casting installs the opposite. You are a drop, and so is she, and so is he. And together you're the thing that ships cannot argue with. One of you added the coda, one of us added the coda live on air, and I wrote it down with delight. This is from Mockers. The ocean is very corrosive. There is not a lot that stands up to seawater. The old Pacific word for the power that gathers in a community acting rightly is mana. I used it last time about the campaign, the Illumina campaign, which incidentally has MN, that frame, phonosemantic frame in it as well. Here it is again, and notice where each casting puts it. The Russian version locates all the power in the state and none in the person. The Ukrainian version locates it in joined hands. When I proof the two against the post-1945 standard, the verdict is not close. One casting serves a machine that needs people, its people inert. The other built the protest the same episode described. Huge crowds, the anthem, and then everyone picking up every piece of litter, so the square is left spotless. Democracy performed so cleanly, it confuses Muscovy. The Russians watched those protests and thought revolution. They could not read them, because in their casting of the proverb, crowds only gather when the system has failed. In the Ukrainian casting, the crowd is the system working, and the show illuminated this. For several minutes, the show did something that looks quite risky and did it exactly right. It read out at length the prison writings of Igor Girkin, convicted for MH17, the man who helped light this war in 2014, his latest lament. Ukraine's strikes are clear, logical, effective, and unstoppable. Our leaders are mediocrities. Without urgent measures, the damage to our military economy will be ominous. Reading out the enemy's words is dangerous work. Repeat a story often enough, even to mock it, and some of it sticks. So the disinfolklore method asks hard questions of any segment like that. Why display the payload at all? Who is holding the frame while it plays? And here's what I heard. Mockers held the frame the entire time. She said the quiet part out loud. He's a mass murderer. and we should not really give him a platform. And the reason his lamentation earns one anyway is that he is impotent, and his misery documents the failure of the machine from inside it. Then she corrected his falsehoods as they went past. He claims Russia has not been fighting for real. She answers, Russia has been fighting for real since 2022. They're simply not the army they think they are. He claims massive strikes on Ukraine's military industry. She answers, every time they hit a shopping center or a Novopochta depot, they call it a NATO facility. The payload never traveled one sentence without its correction riding alongside. And you would not believe how, well, perhaps all of us would believe how rare this is. It's completely absent from New York Times or Washington Post articles where they repeat the Russiast side, but they don't refute it, this both sides thing, which actually serves to brainwash people. But Mockers is doing is she's refuting it in the moment, and the payload never travels from one sentence without its correction riding alongside. And I know Alan and Chuck and Will they often mention, they're blatant about this, that part of the reason they do what they're doing is to give us lines that we can use in our offices or at parties or at school events or wherever anyone comes to us with Ukraine questions, that we're aware, we're on it, we're well briefed, we're like a minister in a government. We know what's going on, and whatever someone comes up with us, we have an answer for it, so the correction can happen in real time. And the listeners, all of us who participate, finish the job. And this is the part I want to hold up to the light. There's a lazy story that floats around our own side, not Moscow, that Gherkin is a seer, the one truth teller in Moscow, the military genius who would have won the war. Oh, if only the fools had listened. That story is a troll. And Lexicon dismantled it with, she's on fire these days with her inputs, with a single remembered fact. If he's such a genius, why was he moaning in 2014 that he couldn't even find 1,000 men willing to rise up with him against Ukraine? The seer might have read that empty recruiting table and understood what it said about the whole project. He didn't. And he's still 10 years on, the penny hasn't dropped. And another voice quietly put the conviction back on the table when the conversation drifted towards calling him merely a critic of corruption. Will interjected, and he said, no, he was indicted and convicted of MH17. Of course, all of us know that, but we need to be reminded of it just at the moment, like we need to be reminded every time someone wonders whether Novopochta was carrying stuff for the Ukrainian army or McDonald's was located. I had to reply to some human or machine that today who was claiming the Laura Loomer McDonald's was close to some military facility in Ukraine, and apparently that has some meaning because Article 51 of the UN Charter gives Ukraine almost the absolute right, once it's proportionate, to hit Russia anywhere it is, whether that's in Ukraine or in Siberia, whereas Russia has no right to hit Ukraine anywhere on Ukraine. It's prosecuting an illegal war on the basis of the Charter of the United Nations, post-World War II legal order. It signed Article 51. So it doesn't matter what is going on in Ukraine. No strike in Ukraine is ever legitimate. And of course, all of us know that and remember it. But sometimes we might forget it. And we might get embroiled in this argument. No, that's not a military facility besides that McDonald's in Kyiv. That's not the answer. You don't refute, you outflank. So that this feeds into the Dugan book as well. And some people see in Gherkin a genuine dissident who went too far. I contend he's something else. He's a security services character, like Dugan, who we'll get to in a minute, whose role is to voice the permitted critique. Listen to the shape of his complaints across a decade. In March 2022, with the invasion already a catastrophe, his line was, "This is a disaster, we must fight more brutally." It's always that. It's never, "This is a disaster, we should withdraw and save ourselves." The critique, one walks up to every line except the one that matters and stops. And Volya used the right phrase for it, almost en passant. He has been used as a pressure valve. A valve looks like an opening. Its function is to keep the boiler intact. The method names this pattern the captured critic, like Dugan. the licensed grumbler, whose fury makes the system look debated while guarding its one non-negotiable premise, that the war itself must go on. So when we enjoy his misery, and I do enjoy it, we should always be clear about what we are reading. And Mockers, when she reads it, does that. She frames every sentence. He's not a prophet. He's a gauge on the side of the boiler, useful precisely because the machine lets him tell us the pressure. The whole segment, payload, frame, corrections, and the listener's dismantling of the seer troll is a masterclass. This is how you display the dark well without drinking from it. Last time, the moment that delighted me most was the tanker watcher praising Ukraine for never touching the lifeboats, and citing the law of the sea, which is one of the most epic pieces of international law that humanity has ever passed. It took decades to get people to sign it and to code it. It's just a codification of the law, international law of the sea, that had evolved over centuries. And that episode produced that moment's Big Brother. And then this week we had the strikes on Wildberries warehouses, which had the usual chorus crying, war crime. One of the regular listeners answered by doing something almost nobody on the internet ever does. He ran the actual legal test, step by step, out loud. Is the target military? He walked the evidence. The ownership change after the 2024 merger brought the company close to the Kremlin. The shipping policies changed. The network carries components that only belong on weaponized drones, and it's a major channel supplying the war. Is the harm proportionate? Strikes on warehouses at night, and in his words, you're killing virtually nobody relative to the value. Then the comparison the critics never make. The same week, Russia put 3 anti-ship missiles into a Turkish grain carrier near Odessa and killed 6 crew. And his verdict? Delivered like a judge who knows he can be appealed. If I'm the war crimes evaluator here, I'll allow it under the Geneva and Hague Conventions. You can disagree with his conclusion, that's fine. What you can't deny is the conduct. He stated the opposing argument fairly, tested the facts, cited the standard, and showed his working through it. That is the second act of naming, done in the wild at full length. And when I say the Volya community has been practicing my method for years without the name, this is what I mean. And of course, it's not just my method, because my method is influenced by listening to Volya. And now the third treasure, and the most uncomfortable one, because it teaches the discipline that keeps the method from becoming a flag. A Russian propaganda crew went to a cemetery to film a glorification piece over the war dead. One local woman wrecked it. Our Putin got us involved in a war, she said. They did not come for your men, they came for our men. Her wounded nephew had to buy his own body armor because the issued kit can be poked through with a nail. It's a drone war, he told her, and we've not seen a single enemy soldier. She stood in front of the graves and called them what the state will not. This is our future lying here. Truth spoken at cost into a camera that wanted lies. And then in the same breath, the same woman turned to complaining about Uzbek migrants and women who dare to cover their hair. 60 seconds and she went from witness to racist, from Russian to racist. So what's the verdict on her? The method's answer is that there's no verdict on her. Verdicts attached to pieces of speech, never to people. Her testimony about the war proofs clean and goes into the bright well, except that the war she's critiquing is an unlawful war. So it is always disinfolklore when she is importuning the authorities in Russia to provide better body armor. She is supporting an unlawful genocidal war. And so this is the problem we have with the Navalny crew, who are trying to make Russia less corrupt. By contrast, the Ukrainians are doing their best to make it more corrupt by setting up all of these, the phoning of people and getting these scams and stuff like that. And if you're trying to make Russia less corrupt, then you're on the wrong side in this war and the wrong side of international law. And anything you speak about that in my book is disinfolklore. Or at least that's how I teach the computer to recognize it. Her racism fails the standard and is named for what it is, which is exactly what the host did on air in real time. If the method cannot hold both of those at once, it's not an instrument, it's a fan club. So the moment we start certifying people instead of proofing their words, we have rebuilt the very machine we're studying. The same discipline touched our own side this episode. So I'll keep last week's habit and say where. There are moments when the delight ran past the targets and warmed itself on the method of the killing, or wrote off an entire people as selfish by nature. Nothing poisonous, nothing invented, nothing all of us don't really believe, but not the bright well either. And the instrument stays silent rather than blessing it. I flag it for the same reason as last week. The verdicts on the ocean, the evaluator in the cemetery are worth something because those ones are not free. And what the method left alone, the cats, the coffee, the numbers read out each morning like a small liturgy, neutral and recorded as exactly that. And what it found, a proverb that carries two opposite spells, and a community that knows which one it lives by. A prisoner's lament displayed at length and never once allowed to stand corrected. Then a listener folding the seer myth with one fact from 2014. Thank you, Lexicon. A vernacular judge running through the Geneva test out loud in real time while we're being fed the information that's being adjudicated. A woman in a cemetery who was witness and warning in the same minute. Babushkas sweeping up market glass while the echoes are still dying under billboards that say unbreakable. A community that shames its own members for posting anything that could cost a battery its position, while the other side races to publish its own damage for the world's analysts to harvest. 2 episodes, and the finding is the same both times, which is what a disinfolklore instrument is. This show has been brewing in folklore for years. It has an infolklorist in chief and did not know the word. The archive is a library of the bright well, recorded weekly, recorded daily, and I'd love to read all of it and make it machine readable. We are the ocean. The ocean is very corrosive. Ask the boiler how the pressure is doing out for that particular episode. Maybe, does anyone want to comment on that, or maybe not, or I can move straight into to Dugan if you've got the energy.
Let's not go there right away. Looking forward to it, though. Let's just talk about Will and and Mockers. And I appreciate what you're saying about him. And I think it is a sign that, first of all, first of all, they are both very generous with their time and their effort, and they obviously bring skills to this and knowledge that really abundant knowledge about what's going on that reflects a great education. So I want to say these are people who came to this task well prepared by their societies and also by their predilection for justice is what I will say. And we're lucky to have them. And they are a good example. For me, at least, I listen to Mockers quite a bit because that's what I want to get to, is something more like that. And hanging on to the good in humanity and hanging on to the idea that we will not stoop to the depth of our enemies is, I think, one of these key things that you bring, and they do as well. So thank you. Wendy?
Well said, James. Very well said. They both bring a different way of expression, but both are very powerful and very useful. And it's wonderful to be part of that team and see a fire fellow with us who is Mocker's main partner these days. And you do an excellent job of supporting her. Thank you so much. And thank you, Decoding. That's a really excellent analysis from an infolklore perspective. And that was just very interesting.
I'll always remember Firefellow's first show with Mockers when he was presenting with her, and he didn't get a word in edgeways. He was so polite at the end, very, very English and polite at the end to kind of say this. And gradually, they've, certainly from the listener's perspective, they found their balance and as I say, yeah, fantastic. We're blessed, which is, I guess, why most of us spend most of our lives listening to this stuff. Jesus, well, on Sunday I was just listening to Will all day long. I had a back catalogue of them, and yeah. But anyway, back to business. Enough of this this emotional, sentimental stuff. We don't have time for that. There's a war going on. So, outflank Dugan, don't rebut. So this is not about Dugan. It's about a method, and it's about the method which Volya does. And I'm just putting a frame around it. So last week I talked about the Chebureshka example and used it to demonstrate that this guy is not a serious philosopher. He's writing about a cartoon character. Do you remember Kant writing about Mickey Mouse? Was Plato writing, earnest texts and saying that the Odyssey was a subversion of the Greek archetype, and we Asterix? I don't like Asterix. No, this guy he's reading scripts. It's a Russist state operation, and to take him seriously is what the operation is about. And the spine of the book I've written is one sentence, and I'll not repeat it every 2,000 words. You'll be glad to know. It'll simply operate underneath everything I say, everything else. Dugan is an artificial creation of the Russist security services, an archetype of a philosopher, I'm air quoting there, and a wise counselor, I'm air quoting there as well. He's an actor, like Putin. They are actors whose role is to justify repeated genocidal, murderous enterprises and to give them a patina of philosophy and respectability. There's a temptation, especially for the well-trained academic reader and the experienced policy reader, to treat the writings of a man with a doctorate as though they constituted philosophy. And this is where our security services and our militaries and our journalists are completely, speaking generally, outclassed by the Russians, because the Russian mill bloggers are linguists. They've studied, like Zarina Zabriskie did, they studied as part of their degrees in Russia, combat propaganda, linguistic techniques. This guy, Dugan, did this as well. And facing across them is some journalist who's gone to journalism school in America and gone to the J school in wherever it is in Columbia and learned about objectivity and this way to report and that way to report. But what they're doing, to understand what they're doing, it's about linguistics. And treating the writings of a man with a doctorate like Dugan, supposedly, although anyone can get a doctorate in Russia with enough money, as though they constitute philosophy. The temptation is to assume that anyone who writes books needs to be answered with books, that anyone who claims a tradition needs to be argued with on its own terms, that anyone who's appeared on the Tucker Carlson show or in Foreign Affairs must be a serious interlocutor and therefore must be seriously rebutted. The temptation, in short, is to engage him. Engaging him is the failure mode. It's precisely what the apparatus, what the Russist apparatus around him is designed to elicit. They've got a linguistic, they've got a vector for every mind. Every Western intellectual sits down to refute foundations of geopolitics. Every analyst who carefully outlines the architecture of the fourth political theory, every podcast guest who patiently dismantles his account of the multipolar world is doing the apparatus's marketing. The apparatus, the Russist apparatus, does not need its philosopher to convince anyone outside Russia. It needs Western interlocutors to engage him as a philosopher. The moment they do, the apparatus has won the only thing it wants from the West, the patina of intellectual seriousness to conceal its serial attempts to murder us all and eviscerate and turn our cities and our joys into biological dust. Engagement transmits the archetypes the apparatus needs in circulation. Engagement is the harm. The opposite move, the right move, is to outflank, to go underneath the figure, to name what the Russian apparatus around him actually is. A security services built justification machine, of which he is just one component, deployed in the wise counselor archetype to dress mass killing in respectability. Stating this once and then proceeding will, I hope, free all of us from the trap of feeling we need to keep refuting him. I will not refute him. I will go around him. The Dugan is a manufactured creation of the Russian security service framing, is not my coinage. The Russian information war analyst Zarina Zabriskie has documented in detail what she calls Russia's cynical use of Eurasianism as imperial strategy and its patsy Russian intelligence operative Dugan. I've written extensively about the actor Dugan since 2022. Some of you might remember some of my tweets. Across some 60 posts about him, I've used words like sorcerer, know nothing, patsy, intelligence operative, fake orthodox religious philosopher. Then once in a moment of clarity that I cannot now improve upon, actor philosopher of Russism. That last one is the phrase I want us to keep in mind. The man is an actor in the dramaturgical sense, not the agent of affairs sense, playing the role of a philosopher in a security services staged play whose dramaturg in chief was, for many years, the political technologist and ex-deputy prime minister of Russia, Vladislav Surkov. Surkov is, in the structural reading this book has been building, the Russian apparatus's director. Dugan is the apparatus's wise counselor. Both are senior named operators of the apparatus, performing different functions in the same dramaturgical stack. Neither, the book wants readers to register early, controls the apparatus he serves. Each plays the role the apparatus has cast him to play. The director plays the director role. The wise counselor plays the wise counselor role. Hitler plays the role of sovereign, of president. The apparatus is the production. The British government took the same view formally when in 2025 it added Alexander Dugin to the United Kingdom sanctions list, along with the Russian Ministry of Defence's media front, Telegram channel Rybar, the Russian Fund for the Support and Protection of Compatriots Abroad, Pravfond, the Center for Geopolitical Expertise. There's an oxymoron. And the pro-Russia propaganda sites Golis.eu and Euromore.eu. Sanctioning a thinker because of his thoughts would be a free speech outrage. Sanctioning a security services deployed influence operator alongside the propaganda channels he operates, beside is intelligence-led action against an apparatus. It is the latter the UK did. Italy's parliament took similar steps the following month. So when I say manufactured creation, I am echoing the legal language a Western intelligence apparatus has used about him in public. I'm echoing the analytical work that one of the sharpest open source Russia watchers, now doing the work of her life in Kherson, may God protect her, writing in English today, Zarina Zabriskie has been doing it for years. I'm also echoing my own observation of him over 4 years. I've read his English language books, the one the Western audience knows of him, Foundations of Geopolitics, The Fourth Political Theory, Putler versus Putler, and the running output of his Telegram and Twitter channels. I'm not engaging them on their own terms because the point of this book is to outflank, not rebut. But I have read him sufficiently to recognize what they are and who he is and who's writing his content. And my opinion, which I'm allowed legally to hold, is that they are the standing script work of a security services deployed archetype operator. They're the kind of writing, and I mean this exactly, whose function in the Russian apparatus communication stack is the same as Surkov's function in its dramaturgical stack. Surkov staged the theater of a theater studies graduate who got his first break as a bodyguard for Khodorkovsky and then rose up in the ranks. But Surkov, a theater studies graduate, staged the theater of post-Soviet Russian politics. Dugin writes the metaphysics. Prigozhin funded the bot farms and the Wagner or the Wanger contractors. Thank you, Nele, for that. Margarita Simonian reads the lines from the Russia Today anchor desk. Sergei Lavrov translates the lines into diplomatic register. Daniel Bezanov-style propagandists under 20 different aliases run the daily liturgy on Telegram, created by the Russian security services. Each is a specialized component. The apparatus is the whole. Dugin's specialism is producing the long-form metaphysical alibi that lets Russian-speaking audiences interpret each of the apparatuses, serial enterprises, Chechnya, Georgia, Crimea, Donbass, Syria, the full-scale invasion, the Wanger deployments across the Sahel, as destiny rather than crime. And I listed those enterprises in a sentence. I did not pause to argue with anyone about whether they were enterprises. I did not stop to debate whether Georgia in 2008 was a provocation or whether Crimea was spontaneous. I listed them. That's the outflanking voice. It refuses the apparatus's debate bait and proceeds with the substantive work. And I'll leave it at that for this week.
Thank you, Decoding. Appreciate this very much. There's so much to say about this. And I do appreciate the main head, which is don't rebut, outflank. And I see what you mean by that. You've given us several examples of it. We can talk around the issue. We can put the frame around it the way that we need to show Russia in their true light rather than how they would be presented. And these are all important things for us to learn as we go forward helping Ukraine. So I'm very happy that you did that. And good work. So, Wendy?
Yes, thank you so much. That is a really excellent way to look at him and to think about him as another aspect of Russia's information war rather than any kind of a genuine philosopher. So thank you so much for that analysis. And I see we have Bull Terrier with us with his hand up. Decoding. Did you have any comment before we hear you?
No, thank you for listening. Always interested to hear Bull Terrier.
Well,
yeah.
right.
Thank you so much, Decoding, and always appreciate your analysis. And I wanted to ask you a question. So I live in Armenia, and I'm kind of concerned that Putin may turn his sights on Armenia next, because he clearly wants to recreate the Soviet Empire. So what are your thoughts on the possibility of Putin maybe even thinking about invading Armenia? I mean, they already have 5,000 soldiers in the Russian base in Gumri in the north of Armenia. So, it's a possibility.
Yeah, well, obviously in their mind, Armenia is connected to Russia, but when you look at a map, it's not. And so Russia already has a very complicated operation in Georgia, running the government, running 2 breakaway fake republics. Oh, and also there's Ukraine. And so they can talk a lot and flex their might. Obviously, one never wants to be complacent about anything, but I think geography is very helpful there. But in the Russians' mind, they don't recognize the geography because they can't read a map properly, and they think, oh, we can just send our army in there. It's not that easy. So yeah, I wouldn't be complacent, but equally, I see they're trying to raise that fear, that disinfolklore in people's minds. So it's interesting to hear that from you, Bull Terrier.
Yeah, I mean, there was a there was a recent election. Pashinyan, the PM, won the election, but there was a huge amount of Russian interference. And what Russia did just before the election and then continued to do afterwards is to block the import of Armenian goods to Russia, which has caused a bit of a, economic crisis. Ursula von der Leyen stepped in and came here, and she's been trying to basically facilitate the exports of Armenian goods to the EU, which is cannot be done immediately, but I mean they're making some progress on it. And she also, the EU donated some money to Armenia to mitigate the losses. But I mean, Russia is, it's a threat. Armenia gets all their gas from Russia, right? Apparently, there's a 10-year contract which has about 8 years to still go. But if Russia suddenly decided to cut off the gas to Armenia, it would be a huge problem.
Yeah, they're very good at manufacturing, as we know, from fear and these concerns. But one of the great things about being literate in the Ukraine information space, I have no idea how literate people are or how much attention they're paying in Ukraine. But obviously, I know, or in Armenia to Ukraine. But obviously, I know you are paying a lot, and so seeing how things play out here and how the same rhetoric is playing out here, hopefully, is a way that you can manage and help do what Will and or what Alan particularly and Chuck always say, that try and help see through these transparent fear-mongering trolls. I mean, on the gas front, so China now makes almost as much gas as Russia did at its height. So it doesn't need any gas. And as we heard this week a lot on Volya about the power of Siberia too, that's not going to happen. So where's their market? So they're very good at projecting these mad threats, but actually their leverage, as in Ukraine, may not be quite as big as they thought it was. But anyway, that's very interesting to hear that from you, Bull Terrier. Out.
Yeah, interesting. I can't speak for Armenians, but I can only speak for what I read on the news and talk with my friends. I think the anti-Russian sentiment here is more about Nagorno-Karabakh and the fact that in 2020 and 22, there were wars over Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, as they call it here. And everybody saw that CSTO didn't work, right? The Russian peacekeepers did not defend Nagorno-Karabakh, even though they were supposed to. And it's a huge tragedy for Armenians that Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh has been lost. And I think that's the main reason why there is such huge anti-Russian sentiment in Armenia at the moment. And I think it's contributed to the election success of Pashinyan, who is basically trying to open the borders between Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, Iran, and Georgia. I mean, the Georgia and Iran borders are open, obviously, but he's pushing his Crossroads of Peace plan, trying to delimit the border with Azerbaijan, trying to, Turkey has basically said they'll open the borders if there is a final peace treaty signed with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is saying that Armenia has to change its constitution to take out any reference to Nagorno-Karabakh. So that's the sticking point at the moment. But yeah, the anti-Russian sentiment here is huge, basically because of what happened over Nagorno-Karabakh.
Well, it's clear that there's this salami slicing process that's in action there, right? They've taken apart and they want the whole thing. And how is that going to be put down is, I think, the question, Bull Terrier. I don't know what you think about that, but it's pretty far along. But as we can see, what Russia can put, over somebody like Crimea, it can also be undone. So I think there's reason to hope, but I think there's a lot needed to make sure that Russia is thoroughly defeated, so that the right things happen later on. And so that's a challenge to every nation who cares about democracy and self governance, because salami slices. Yeah, no, 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 no. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. Canada does not want that. I know that for sure. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Back to you.
Well, I mean, we see an ongoing situation in Georgia, right, where a lot of people believe that the last elections were rigged, and they're out there on the streets every night, hundreds of them in Rustaveli Avenue, protesting. And, what what brought this to my attention, I guess, was, and I can't even remember if it was a post or a YouTube video, where somebody was speculating about, is Russia going to go after Poland next? Is Russia going to go after the Baltic states next? And, I can't remember who it was, but this person said, no, actually, it's going to be Georgia and Armenia, because they don't have any defense, they don't have any defense against Russia. So, that's why I was kind of bringing it up.
I hear you. And, what we've heard is 50,000 crazy Russians are not wanted back home. And so what do you do with those kind of crazy Russians? Yeah, this is one of the things that has been talked about. I don't know what will happen, but I have the sense that Russia is going to get, because it's needed for Ukraine, going to get a thrashing. And the idea that they're going to go and launch another military escapade somewhere else is something that I think might spark much wider response than Ukraine got, because in fact I think Ukraine's response has allowed other countries to see the way forward in terms of supporting, and a lot of things about Russia have now been disputed and understood to be completely false. And there's nothing inevitable about Russian victory, and I think that people have a better understanding of that. So I hope that's the case. I hope we're not giving up on the world order. I'd like to get rid of 3 people who are leading that effort right now, and take them off our United Nations Security Council.
Yeah, I mean, it's heartening to see the Ukraine's, how can I say it? I was going to say victories, but not, the fact that they are really fighting back and making ordinary Russians understand that this war is something they need to appreciate and need to understand. Absolutely. One of the interesting things about wild berries, again, is that just I think before or after the recent election here, Russia banned Armenians from exporting things to Russia via wild berries, right? So they actually blocked that, as well as imports of Armenian fish and water and agricultural products and things like that. So they're finding out now.
Quick
Thank you,
interjection.
Carrier. It's always it. Oh, go ahead, Decoding.
I was just
Then I
going
have
to
a question
quickly
for you.
interject. Will quipped today about the acting defense minister that his name was a bit like Karma, and then Zdenka responded in her very lucid, clear way, say, actually, it's Kamara or something like that. And then I wanted to interject to say, well, actually, that doesn't help the Russians, because whether it's Karma or Mara is the Lord of Death in Tibetan Buddhism, and the Russians know this best because the best Tibetan Buddhist libraries are in Russia, because they've occupied so many Tibetan Buddhist countries. So So yeah, that wild berries anecdote is, I mean, that encapsulates everything. So the Armenian producers didn't lose their goods. They weren't in those warehouses because they didn't get them to the warehouses, and now look what's happened. So yeah, I mean, everything Russia does turns to shit. But as I say, we can't be complacent, but equally, nor can we be haunted or allow them to haunt our dreams, our nightmares with their disinfolklore too much. Ouch.
Well, just to chip in again, I mean, the other ridiculous thing is that now so many Russians in Crimea or other parts of Russia are complaining that they can't get fresh produce, they can't get goods, they can't get this, they can't get that. And yet Russia is blocking imports of Armenian fruit, Armenian vegetables, fish, water, all sorts of, I just find this hilarious, that they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Thanks, Bull Terrier. While we still have decoding, I have a question for you. I put into the nest a long thread by Chris Owicki, and it is addressing the archetype of the SVO schnick, a drunk, traumatized, violent veteran. These are the Russians who do survive their time on the front line and return to Russia and do terrible things to the civilian population. And I wondered what you thought about this archetype. And I do see that you're there, Sky Kiss, and we'll get to your hand as soon as we're done with this part. So this archetype. If you look at the picture that's posted in the nest, it looks the figure looks very demonic. You have a guy squatting with a gas mask on and a gun, a rifle on his shoulder. Very very threatening and odd. So I just wondered what your thoughts were about this archetype decoding.
Yeah, I think archetype is the right word because A Bitter Lake, which is that series of documentaries done by the great British documentary maker, maybe Bull Terrier will remember his name, it escapes me for the moment. He did great work on the return of the Afghan veterans, as indeed did Svetlana Alexeyevich, the great Belarusian Nobel laureate who collected the first-hand testimonies from the Helsinki boys, which is often credited with helping to end that particular war. So it's an archetype, and many of us thought mothers of missing soldiers. I worked a lot with mothers of missing soldiers in Ukraine between 2015 and 2022. And so I suppose all of us, along with Illusiony, we're in good company, thought in the first month all we had to do was get up to 15,000 deaths, the equivalent reported deaths of Afghanistan, and that it would be done. And one of the big, the many stupidities of this, along with, like Bull Terrier's just talked about that, banning the export of goods when they're really stuck for goods, is that they do these things which have no logic, and so it will haunt Russian society, as Will has been very good on that as well, consistently. But I see that picture. I'm a bit wary of pictures like that, and it looks a bit grim. And I'll think about it, Wendy, because there could be something going on there that maybe they're trying to stir up fear or deploy the archetype. Are they trying to justify not bringing them home, which we know they don't want to bring them home from the SVO? But they'll just walk across the border. They'll be shooed across the border by the Ukrainians. And we'll have a march, a caravan march on Moscow, something like that. I mean, Karman is it's not mysterious, it's causal. You send them away to kill Ukrainians for money, and then you select them for that, and then they'll come back and do awful things. And I guess we will see that out. It's interesting, they've archetyped it as the SVO schnick. So that's an ominous sign for the people who've gone back. But as far as we can see from the data we're all seeing each day, which is just enormous amounts of data, is being communicated into our brains from Twitter, but also from Mockers and Co. The SVO schnick and the family they're going back to doesn't see anything wrong with the war itself. They're still in this state of mental they're completely brainwashed, and so they probably have more in common than they have apart. It's not like they're going back thinking, oh, the war was a bad war or something like that. People just don't really like them because they're going to do terrible things, but they don't seem like it wasn't. It's not like this was a noble war from the beginning for any one of them. So the SBO schnicks went there to fight for money, most of them, and their family sent them there to fight for money. Which makes it almost even, well, I'm not going to say it's worse, but it's certainly as bad as if they had some genuine patriotic fervor to decide to go and annihilate all of Ukrainians. So that should impact on it. But obviously research. Like I remember early on, Galeotti, one of the clues I got that he was probably working for the Russians or just a complete what do they call them? Useless idiot, useful idiot, was like in the summer of 2022, he and his Russian wife got funding from some American or some think tank from somewhere. They got loads of money, I presume it's loads of money, to do a thing about the weapons amnesties in Ukraine after the war. So the war's still going on. And he's doing a campaign, and I wrote to him about it because I did work on that when I was in Ukraine, where I was told that by a senior police officer in 2018 in the company of a Russian colleague. So someone sent to Ukraine to work for my organization by the Russian government. And the senior police commander said to him, well, I don't think we're going to get many weapons in this amnesty because we were expecting an invasion from our neighbor. Would you give up your weapons if your neighbor was going to invade? And so I conveyed the story to Mark Galeotti, thinking he was just a bit misguided, and he blocked me. So we're going to see loads of stories to try and drum up sympathy or support, or oh, look what'll happen. We might even see the Russian opposition looking for money from Western foundations to try and rehabilitate these SBO schnicks. So anyway, that's my rambling answer. Out.
Thanks, Decoding. Nothing more assuring than a bottle of whiskey in one hand and a rifle in the other, wearing those googly eye headgear. Yeah, not at all comforting. Yeah, so they project pretty well in terms of if that's what they're looking for, they did it well. Crazy. Anyway, let's see. So is Skykiss next?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Skykiss, welcome.
Hi. Long time no talk to you all. And hi, Wendy. Thank you very much. And really exciting to be here with Decoding and our longtime pal, Bull Terrier. And I see a lot of people I know. So who was it who was mentioning about the Tibetan the where Russia was taking over? That was really interesting. I had not heard that, and I would really like to explore that further, even if it's just sending me, some website or something, an article, just to get me started on exploring this. I'm really interested. Because I haven't really done a lot of practice, but studied and also do some artwork that's Tibetan Buddhist, has certain elements in it. So that's my artwork, though. But I'm really interested in the history. So if you could elaborate on this, and as far as it's just another interesting, curious puzzle in the saga that is the Rashid Empire. All of the destruction of other cultures. So I'm very interested in it for that reason. Thank you.
That was Decoding that mentioned it. I was I know China right now is seriously repressing Tibetan Buddhist regions. I did not, it's not quite as aware about Russia doing the same thing as well. Decoding, can you elaborate on which areas these documents might be located?
Yeah. First, the Code of Positive Trolls, my 6-element test, which distinguishes between disinfolklore and infolklore, and which I use in all my work and I try and embody or model myself. That is from the 6 paramitas, 6 perfections. So generosity, ethical discipline, patience, mana, energy, focus, and insight. And so if a piece of a narrative or a lexical unit passes all of those, then it's in folklore. And the ethical discipline, the standard, is in the case of disinfolklore, it's set by the post-World War II legal order, which is not inconsistent with the 10 perfections, which if you take vows in Tibetan Buddhism, you take. Russia's, it's one of these many surprising things about Russia for many of us. So, for instance, the only Buddhist republic in Europe is Kalmykia, part of Russia. It has
Someone's got a mic open.
And the libraries, the study of Buddhism from a non-Tibetan perspective was pioneered in Paris and in America in the past 50 years at Columbia by, interestingly, what was her name? She's that famous actor, and her father is the greatest Buddhist scholar from Columbia. It'll come to me, and I'll send you the link. He'd be a great person for you to start with. But it's just one of the many dimensions in Russia. It was so blessed. Like, you couldn't imagine a more blessed country. America, maybe. Both of them end slavery around the same time, 1868. And 1870, 1868, I think, was serfdom, whatever it was, or 1868 America, whatever. And they have all of the resources. And look what they've done in America, and look what they've done in Russia. And they have all of this amazing intellectual capital from Tibetan Buddhism, and having occupied so many of these Buddhist countries, or from Mongolia onwards, and tried to eradicate this during the Soviet times, because it was all seen as all religion, and then all that. But their archives and their libraries are unbelievable. And so you will sometimes see Putler in his meetings with spiritual leaders from around the Russian Federation, and you will see Tibetan monks there. And some of them, I remember being once at a teaching with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and there was a Russian Lama who, to you or I, would look no different from any other Tibetan Lama, who asked a question, and His Holiness was uncharacteristically but very focusedly, I'll use the word aggressive, because in our world, that's probably what it looked like towards this guy. And I took from that he saw this guy as a patsy. like the kinds of people that the Chinese would want to appoint. So Russia has all that really complicated history, and it is something to wonder at. But I'll think of the name of this Columbia University academic, and if you want to read something really accessible, really interesting. And Uma Thurman, her father, Robert Thurman. So you find the dual tree of enlightenment. I would highly recommend that if you're vaguely interested. It's not going to convert you to Buddhism, but it's Paka. He's a proper Paka monk. Uma Thurman's father was, believe it or not, and so everything he says is proper Paka, and it's very accessible and true and very interesting. And on the Russian angle, if you're interested in the particular Russian angle, there is a good book called the Red something. I'll send you the screenshot of the cover of it if you're particularly interested in that aspect of it. But Robert Thurman, that'd be a good starting point.
Oh, thank you so much. And I sent you a quick DM so you can just see that and shoot me whatever comes to mind. Just something, a good starting point will be appreciated. Thank you. Robert Thurman. Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you for asking, Skykiss. I really got into Tibetan Buddhism after reading the trilogy, I would say, that was interpreted by Evan Wentz, who was working there. He didn't write this. He just helped to get it into English. And those books are, wow, a little bit more daunting, I think, or I hope, than Thurman's book, because it was work to get through that. And you were saying that was maybe a simpler thing. That's good. But if you want to learn about all of the, how do you call them, deities? This trilogy is amazing. And also darn good philosophy in there. So anyways, Wendy?
Yeah, it'd be great to get back to Ukraine, but I just want to add my own aside about Tibetan Buddhism. I have studied it as well in my time in Los Angeles. I find the philosophy very interesting. And as a scientist, one of my favorite books is written by His Holiness, who I've seen in person, at the big gatherings twice, the Dalai Lama. And it's called The Universe in a Single Atom, and it's about the Dalai Lama's take on science. He is quite fascinated with science. So it's a very accessible book. It's not that hard to get through, and it's one of my favorites.
Well, we all come at this from different angles. So anyways, interesting. Well, let's bring it back down to the ground here of Ukraine and see where we want to go from there. I know that there are Buddhists and Buddhist Harame that are there in Ukraine. So it's perfectly good ground to start talking about religious freedom and the like, which Ukraine does enjoy in abundance. A variety of churches are freely practicing their thing without being stooges for their governments, by the way, like Russia. Anyways, decoding.
I can't resist this little factoid, but because it goes to Ukraine's centrality to so much. But Evans Vence went to Tibet because he was a follower of the Theosophists. Madame Blavatsky was born in Dnipro and created this kind of fusion of Egyptian and esoteric Tibetan Buddhism. It wasn't kind of it was kind of like a greatest hits, and she made up quite a lot of it. But it interests me that I see Tibetan Buddhism as one of the great Indo-European expressions of pure Indo-European religion, because obviously it was cooked in India. And I imagine, I've been to her house in Dnipro, Helena Blavatsky, who created this huge movement around the late 19th century that went into cosmosism. And I last wrote about her on Twitter when Irmak was found going to visit a medium, because she's the kind of the top creator of this kind of mystical stuff. But Evans Vence's work then, I've talked about it before on the show because of the great introduction to the Book of the Dead, which I think you were talking about there. Starting there, that basically describes the death process and what you have to have chanted at you as you're going through the death process. It's the most important stuff in Buddhism, but I wouldn't start there. It's very daunting of you. But anyway, Jung wrote a great introduction to it, and but Helena Blavatsky was as just another Ukrainian. And then, I wrote this piece, and then, these idiots, they always come back and they say, oh, but she was Russian. She was born in the Russian Empire. No, she was Ukrainian. We just didn't know what Ukraine was, because we're brainwashed into seeing everything as Russia. And it's just another example of how she basically prepared the way for Evans Vence, and then for this great flowering in the last 30, 40 year of translations from the University of Wisconsin and Columbia. And Robert Thurman's done a great job of giving us access to these ideas that have not been available to anyone outside of Tibet since they left India millennia ago. And so there is a Ukraine connection. That's all I say, but I'll leave it at that out.
It's hard to leave it right there, but I'll try to leave it there as well. No, it's just I can't leave it alone, because you just talked about this in recent weeks about the grave diggers arriving, and you talked about the Bardo in the 40 days. And so, we can't just leave this alone, but we'll try to move along here. But this is really especially, I thought, important, the reflection of what you were talking about in the last 2 weeks about the grave diggers, which is not necessarily for Russians, but for Russia itself. That is the grave that is being dug right now. And I am glad, and I said this before, that the grave diggers have arrived. Make sure it's deep enough. We don't want the smell. Anyway, sorry, that's crude.
All right. I didn't see whether Scouts or Sky Kids had their hand up first. Do you know, James?
I do not.
Well, I think Bull Terrier also has his hand up. I just wanted to say this is absolutely fascinating. I had no idea that Madame Blavatsky was born in Dnipro. That's exciting. Yeah, in my early 20s, I read pretty widely, and in philosophy and all these esoteric spiritual practices. And that was, she's one of the authors who I read a little bit of, but I also read a lot of Carl Jung. I still have a dozen of his books. And right now, one of the things I'm doing the most is studying his psychology, going back to study.
I'm sorry, Sky Kiss. Wandering finger. Continue. Sorry, Sky Kiss.
Sorry.
My bad.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So it's really interesting to find all these connections to Ukraine. Just really, really interesting. So unexpected. I thought, well, okay, decoding's there, and I'll go listen. Oh my goodness! Wow, this is very curious. And I've actually sent the space to a couple of my friends who I thought would really love this particular topic, even though they can't be here. They're on a completely different schedule. So go ahead.
Send them the link. Send them the link
I did.
to the recording.
I did.
It'll be in the posted later. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Okay. So
All
I
right.
think Bull Terrier also has his hand up, and Scouts was next. Bull Terrier and then Scouts. Thank you. That's what I noticed.
No,
thanks.
I don't see Bull Terrier's
He
hand up.
did.
I'm
He
here.
did
I have seen.
have it up.
I'm here.
Okay.
So
I'm here. Can I?
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I have to go in a minute, so I just wanted to ask Decoding a final question, and it's related to the Russian military, and we're talking about culture, right? And all of the things that we're learning about the Russian military in terms of their treatment of Ukrainian prisoners and civilians is absolutely terrible. And I wanted to go back to a book that was written by Richard Bissell a few years ago, Germany 1945, From War to Peace. And I wanted to quote Bissell's book, right? Okay, and it's about the liberation, so-called liberation of Berlin. And I quote, "This did not mean that peace and security had arrived. For many Berliners, the post-war era began with rape. The end of April brought not only energetic Soviet attempts to get the city's services up and running, it also saw an explosion of sexual violence by Soviet soldiers. Women were raped in cellars in their flats in front of their children and German men. Women were gang raped, and groups of women were divided up to be raped by soldiers. No woman was safe from sexual humiliation. Old women, as well as young girls, were raped. The great wave of rape began when the Red Army captured substantial portions of the city and continued until the battle for Berlin came to an end." I'll stop there. It's quite disturbing, but I just wanted to ask Decoding, like, there seems to be a culture, and we often talk about culture. There seems to be a culture in the Russian army that is deeply, deeply wrong and disturbing. And I just wanted to ask for your comments on that.
well, first I
Gosh,
think. Go.
well, I think all of us are very surprised. I certainly was. I remember the first time a Ukrainian friend of mine, sent me a WhatsApp, probably around, well, in my memory, it was around maybe the 15th of March and 2022, and talked about the rumors of single events in Bucha and places. And that surprised me. And now, looking back, that surprises me. And that moment is a good memory marker for me of, even though I was in Ukraine, I left Ukraine because I knew the full-scale invasion was coming. I had read that letter by the US ambassador to international organizations in Geneva, in which she listed all of the crimes the Russians were about to commit. I watched very closely the Russians I worked with in Ukraine, and I knew what they were planning. But even I was shocked by that, by the stuff that from the first few days that was coming out. And I know I'm not alone. It's a weapon of war, of course, and you, if you're running an army, you get your army to do this kind of stuff as a military strategy. I was interested this week I was quite persuaded that just this attitude to human life, that it doesn't matter, and that mass sacrifice which is a very old idea, mass self-sacrifice is not only is valuable to keep the community and the culture alive, which I think most of us would agree with. But the idea that just because this idea is valid, that you would then on purpose go and send a few guys to get captured in Konstantinivka because their lives don't matter, or you'd send people to their deaths because which it was rumored that Yermak was involved in, because they had criticized people. That mentality obviously isn't just confined to the Soviets. We see that in Iran at the moment with stuff. So I'm really happy to see the way the new commander of the military is being archetyped in Ukraine, and that he and that's the most important thing, that he values human life. That's what everyone says. And Ukrainian friends of mine who have children who will serve in the military now, I feel, I don't know how my friends feel, but at least I feel a little bit better that the person in charge values human life, or it is said that he values human life, whereas no one seemed to ever say that about Sorsky. So I'm quite hopeful about the future.
Thanks, Decoding. Well, Bull Terrier, I think that was a very good answer to your question. It just also rung a bell with me about Timothy Snyder's on freedom and the idea that liberation is not just the absence of an oppressor, it is also the presence of good, some good. And I think that's a really key thing. So just wanted to say that before we go over to Scouts. Well, yeah, stick around. Scouts, hey, welcome.
Well, good to be here. Always enjoy and learn something when I hear Decoding talking about techniques that are useful in dealing with the rushes, as he calls them. And I appreciate the idea of naming, calling something by its true name with our memeing, and also with our, we call it bonking, but I think we've all gotten much more careful and more focused in how we do what we do. And I think it's been useful, and I think that you've been very instructive among us who are trying to counter the speech that's coming across, the hybrid warfare. I know that we've left the topic of religion. I'm a Christ follower myself. And so, though I have studied religions, Buddhism, Hinduism as well. And if you ever get to a point where we're wanting to talk more about that, I'd be very interested in exploring all sides of that, not just Buddhism and Hinduism, a part of those things. I do look forward to this discussion about equipping ourselves for this kind of warfare here, as opposed to the other. So, but anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you again for your work you do to equip us for this. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Scouts. Thank you for that. Do we have any more questions or comments for Decoding? I know his time is limited, and we've gone quite long already with him. It was a big news day, so there are a few things to go over. But any more questions or comments for Decoding? Now's the time.
I want to reply to Scouts. Well, Decoding is still here, and just say that among the things that are the presence of goods, it is the presence of the ability to worship how you please. And this is one of our great freedoms here in the United States. Sometimes it's under fire, of course, but it is absolutely under fire in Russia, and you know that it's also under fire in Ukraine. So I think that the reason that we talked about Buddhism is it's in the roots of Ukraine in special ways, and that go back to antiquity. But I think that all of these different religions, that they are respected and accepted inside of Ukraine, is a measure of the development of their society. So we may get around to that, but I just wanted to pipe up and say that much. So thank you for saying it. Appreciate it. It's not, it's because it just so happens, Wendy, Decoding, and I'm also Christian, but I practice that. But I'm also fascinated and been, I would say, a little bit more enlightened because of my exposure to Buddhism. So, and I think that's not a bad thing, is to look at different religions and see what each says and what they offer. And sometimes you won't hear it, you won't see it from one aspect, but you may learn a truth from another. Anyways, yeah. Wendy?
Thanks, James. That's a very good insight. I see we have Harlan with us. Harlan,
Yeah.
welcome.
Well, strangely enough, I actually have a Ukrainian anecdote about exactly how tolerant they are. My mother's father was a what we call a Bible beating, hell and brimstone country preacher from rural Arkansas, and his religion, or the church, there was no other church. It was only that one, and everyone else was going to hell. So that's where I'm. So anyway, he goes to Donetsk in '03 and '04 to save the Ukrainians. I'm not kidding. This really happened. And even though and he was the best guy, man. He gives his shirt off his back, just absolutely walked the walk. But and he brought that message, and he wasn't scared to say it. But the people loved him. They accepted him. They brought him to speak to a high school class, and so anyway, and everything good you hear about the Ukrainians, he told me back then. The love of animals and the family and faith and all that stuff. So it's just that they had it together back 22 years ago.
Thank you for that, Harlan. That is a very good anecdote. Thank you so much. James?
Yeah, well, I don't really have a reply to that. Glad to hear it. These things are interesting and enlightening too. So appreciate that. Let's see now. Let me check the time. Wow, time does fly here, does it not? It's certainly something that we have to pay attention to. We've got a couple people who are requesting as well, so I want to be respectful of people's time and get this done. So I better stop talking, I suppose. Sky Kiss, we want to get some news out, so everybody try to be terse.
Be first, brief, succinct. That's the word. So I just wanted to agree with this current thread of discussion. James, I completely agree with you. I have we only had a minor at my school, so I have a minor in religious studies, and we studied the whole breadth, even Native American faiths and practices. We didn't do a whole lot of Tibetan, though, which is kind of sad to me. I mean, we did explore Buddhism generally. And I'm really, really, my, I'm so touched, but not just the regard the Ukrainians have for animals, but also the way that mostly we see all of them living in harmony, all these different faiths in in the armed forces as well as in the country generally. So I just wanted to underscore that point. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Mary, welcome.
Hey, James. Hey, Wendy. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to say how great this conversation was. And when I actually used to teach Sunday school back in the day before life became crazy. And one of my favorite things to do with my kids, and my pastor was completely on board with it, is we would actually go to other religions and expose the kids, and they would meet. Like, we have a place here with monks, and so the monks would speak to the kids about the similarities of the religions and how, like, the premises of them. And that was one of my favorite things to do. We went to mosques, we went to all different places, and the kids loved it. The kids loved seeing, I taught 3rd and 4th graders, being exposed to all the different religions. So yeah, I just think it's great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for that. Yeah, good discussion of religion. Now we want to talk about, I think, things more Ukrainian. I feel an urge to talk about some of the topics that we've had come up today and yesterday. Wendy, do you want to do a little bit of news now, or any other direction?
Yes. No. Let's go over some of the big news. We have booms in the news and we have changes in the news, and both those things are good to go over.
Let's see where to start, I think is a big question. I'm going to do this, strangely enough, backwards because I want to just get right to the numbers today. A bit of news. And the quote from the Defense of Ukraine account today is patience, persistence, and perspiration make an unbeatable combination for success. Napoleon Hill. And so in the last day, there has been 1,330 eliminated personnel from Russia, 2 tanks, 4 armored combat vehicles, 57 artillery pieces, 3 multiple launch rocket systems, 1,610 UAVs, unmanned, unmanned ground vehicles, 11, which is a bit of a peak there. And let's see, vehicles and fuel tanks is down, 355, and special equipment, nice, number 9. There we go.
Excellent. And I don't have the Air Force report here. We did see it posted last night. One thing to note over the last week or so, since the last big ballistic missile attack, is the number of drones that Russia is sending is down overall. The Shahid and Garans into civilian areas. I think the other night last night. It was back up a little bit to I believe it was 216 or somewhere in that range. But the night before it was like 58 and 1 ballistic missile. So that is relatively low. Still, 58 too many. But it's interesting that over the last month, especially, the average per night has been dropping rapidly, and that may say something about Russia's ability to produce and obtain and to launch these horrible items. James?
I think so. I think you're right on target there. So Steve Rosenberg, he reads Russian newspapers, so you don't have to, and he turns it into English too, which is so helpful for those of us who don't know better. And I just want to remind people he's back. He's back in action, and he's come up with a beautiful set of quotes out of what he's read that are sort of Russian sayings, and I think I'll leave it to you guys to watch that. But it's interesting and informative about Russia. So, anyways, I'm going to leave that there. It's a relatively minor thing.
All right. I posted in the nest, since we are dealing with propaganda and disinfolklore, along kind of a post from Gavril Duku, however you pronounce his name, about recognizing propaganda. He comes at it from a different perspective. We're all pretty good at dealing with propaganda from the opposition, but we need to be equally aware of when it comes from the side we prefer. And that's a lot of what this post is about. So it's really, a good way to expand your awareness. And he's saying that, you can be manipulated while repeating your values, validating your anger, and presenting as a more committed version of what you already believe. Beware of things that say that you must do this now. If you don't believe this, you're not loyal, etc., etc. So things that urge urgency, things that urge you to be blindly loyal without thinking for yourself. these are all red flags, and those red flags can come from the side you do not support and the side that you do. So it's a really good thing to look over, and I highly recommend it. Back to you, James.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll check it out in depth. Defense of Ukraine account is reporting that President Zelensky, acting Defense Minister Evgen Kamara, and new Commander-in-Chief Major General Mikhailo Dripati have agreed on priority defense tasks, mobilization, the core system, cyber forces, and faster work on the Freya, which is the anti-missile defense system. So this is good stuff to hear. These are all really important topics. So it seems like to me they've got their focus in.
Definitely, for anyone that's been under a rock this last week, the Ukrainians have made some changes, and the General Sersky is no longer the head of the military. It will now be Dripati. Mikhailo Fedorov, it's not clear what his role will be in the future. So there are many changes at the top of government. The people protested against the removal of Fedorov because they saw them as hope for a future that was not Soviet oriented. And it seems that with the appointment of Dripati, Ukraine has taken a step in that direction, for better or worse, since Dripati is a little more future oriented and less of a quote butcher, as Sersky has been called by some. So we'll see. I applaud the fact that President Zelensky called together all the relevant people for that might have some say in this. The military people, people in the defense industry, people in procurement, and talk to them before making the decision. That's the way to run a democracy, and made a decision based on input from a lot of different sources. Whether or not it's the right decision, we'll see. But I think it's a good thing that it wasn't based on somebody's gut feeling or what they want or their ideology. It's based on what the people are asking for and what the people who have a stake in it have given their input. And on that topic, we don't often promote other spaces, but in just a couple of hours, Rachel Jameson will be hosting a space where foreign fighters will be discussing this issue. So that might be a good one to tune into. Foreign fighters who are in Ukraine, they will give their input on what they think about the changes that have been made and are upcoming. James?
I think she's visited our space, and so it's good to turn around and give back to others. And wisdom doesn't only come from here if it comes here at all. Anyway, so I appreciate that. And later on, Tango Whiskey will be with us at 7 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States. Figure out the time. I'll put it into the nest, but we hope that you can join him. He's a Canadian volunteer that is recently back from Ukraine, so he's in my time zone. But we'll get to talk about Canadian stuff and his experiences in Ukraine. Mocker set us up. It's a blind date.
Wonderful. He spoke on spaces a lot in the past. He's been absent for a while, so it would be wonderful to hear him come back and give us some information. In other news items, In a first, Ukraine has downed a Russian fighter jet with an F-16. This news came out a little while ago. And there is, I believe this happened on July 8th, but it's just been officially confirmed. This is the first real air-to-air shoot down between fighter jets and with the F-16. So that is a very positive thing for Ukraine.
Pew 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 pew. Yes, it is a very good thing to see and hear about this. It's exciting because this is the way we classically think about air battles. Is yeah, it's shooting, and what we've seen is not classical things, but damned effective and actually a lot safer for the pilots. What Ukraine has been doing, and again, the Care for Life shows very clearly, and it's so opposite from Russia. So let's see. And by the way, we're getting along here. Yesterday was the 26th day of the 40-day operation, and the little summaries that United Media 24 are doing, well, I put it in the nest so you could look at it, but it comes with usually a graphic and a few words about what's going on. So I'm going to go over that really quick. So day 26 of this operation to change Moscow's mind. First, it highlights Kursk region, occupied Mariupol, occupied Crimea, and Zaporizhia region, or the where most of the efforts went. And so coastal radar was destroyed. Drone command network knocked out. MiG-29 and Pantsir hit. Let's see, 3 MSTA howitzers destroyed. Fuel trucks, gas stations, and Russian warehouses hit. Indeed, wild berries. Maybe you better stop selling military stuff. Oh well. Anyway, too late now. Wendy.
Sorry, it was approving Iwana's request. Iwana's on her way up, as well as Lexicon. I'll get her request approved. I see Iwana is still connecting. Oh, there, James, you got a Lexicon. That's great. Yes, you mentioned the wild berries hits. That's 4 of their major centers now. It looks like 3 of them have been totally destroyed, and that one has been damaged. So that is a new campaign by Ukraine now that they've done serious damage to refineries and shipping in the Black Sea and the Azov Sea. So that will be ongoing, and that is fantastic. Lexicon?
Lexicon.
Oh, hi. Did you call on me?
Yep.
Hi. Can we hear each other? I'm
Yep.
I'm at the demo, and so I can't hear you very well. It's very interesting. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, but what demo is this?
What demo is there? What other? The Fedorov, bring back Fedorov demo. That's what I'm at.
Oh, I thought maybe you were
So,
destructing a building or something, demolition, but no.
oh,
Okay, go ahead.
demonstration, manifestation, meeting. It's called in Ukrainian. I'm talking too loud. Very
Doing
interesting
fine.
because it's, huh?
You said you were talking too
This
loud. I
is
said
your
you're doing
roving.
fine.
Oh yeah, it's just some people are looking at me. This is your roving reporter calling you from the circle in front of Ivan Franko Theater. And well, I have the headset on, so you won't hear the demonstrations. But yeah, so I came quite early. But it's really what happens is a few hardy souls. I mean, there are various people hanging around the square, the circle. It's a square that's circular, and making signs. and people have left things from previous nights. They have their stash of materials, and then gradually, well, at some point around 6, after 6, somebody with a megaphone gets up and they sing, what did they, not Chervona, they sang Oyo Lucy, red verbena in the meadow. And they said, let's go over to the stairs here and we'll just hear people's comments. So a small number of people started off, and they just started with a few moves, quite old, just as we
Lexi,
have
you're roboting a little bit. Maybe move a little.
still. Oh, is it? Is it still
Oh,
rubber?
oh,
Feel
that's
better.
better now.
Is it? Do you hear? Shall I come? Shall I try again?
Yeah,
Come back?
try again. Well, rats. Rats. Okay, well, obviously they're generating a lot of interference out there with their demonstration. Maybe they're all modeling it after what War Doggo is trying to get things paid for. I don't know. Anyways, interfering. Anyway, she'll come back, I hope, and talk to us. But Wendy, I think Awana's next, and then Mother.
Yeah, just quickly, Lexi, I just got the speaker request. I approved it, and it said there was an error. So try again. Please go ahead, Iwana.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be short. So I just wanted to comment on the taking down the Su-35 by the F-16, which is an amazing performance. Su-35 is one of the most advanced Russian aircraft, 4.5 generation or something like this. F-16 is lower than that. It's fourth generation. Also, the plane was not a new plane. It was an old plane, I believe, manufactured more than 30 years ago. Yeah, that's a performance. But what I wanted to mention is that it was a teamwork. It wasn't just an individual pilot. It was a teamwork. It was a strategy thing. There was this F-16 plus 2 others plus a Patriot team that was surveilling everything. Normally, the Su-35 has a double range for radar, double range for missiles, and arguably the Russian pilots should have more experience. And still, Ukraine managed to take down one of these planes by older, less equipped aircraft, but it was a teamwork. And it's not surprising, but because Ukraine does everything as teamwork. And yesterday I commented about the air defense and the use of Patriots by Ukraine, where they brought innovation and a specific way of doing things and doing the triage before even thinking to target something. Today, I just wanted to mention that this performance of taking down a Su-35 by an F-16 by an Ukrainian pilot is a performance, but it's also teamwork. Back to you.
Excellent. Good to
Thanks.
know. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much for that clarification, Iwana. That's why we love you. You're so brilliant. Thank you so much.
Indeed.
Do we want
I want to go back to lexicon.
Sure, then we'll go to another.
Oh, you just fine. Can you hear me at all?
Pretty well.
Okay. So really, so the way they do a demonstration, it's like a happening, because as people do slogans, they scande, when you chant slogans. And I was writing some of them down. But so as somebody else likes one and calls it out, they'll chant that together for a while, and then another one. So most of the slogans are about Fedorov, and actually is the
We're losing you again, unfortunately.
Yeah, so Fedorov is action, not promises, and act first, not schemes, and also deputies back to work and first, then take your holiday. So a lot of stuff aimed at the deputies, and then another one is lives of soldiers above all, and no oppression of soldiers. So that's really amazing. So all of the stuff is most of the slogans are focusing on bringing back Fedorov and on the attention to soldiers, lives of soldiers, and aimed at the deputies to do their job. To some my day, I thought people you might know what what
Ruh-roh.
I think we lost you again, Lexi. Oh, there you are.
they said that what so why do you need to have Fedorov? And they said, we have a minister for 6 or 7 months and he figures out the problem and then he's gone. And we don't want to just bring in another one who then looks at it again. They said the problems are really complex and he understands them. And they said also over the period of these demonstrations, we understand his plans better and better. If you keep changing ministers, that of the reforms. So he's the one that we really have confidence in. And then, of course, other things that I've been reading, the notion of bringing in a military, really, in a way, they love the guy, but it threatens the notion of civilian command of the military that they care about a lot. And that's a sort of about as there are it's like if you're more into beating on your then you're up there near the steps, and if you just want to sit around with your cardboard poster and photograph, then you sit around the park bit. So
I'm gonna.
Lexicon,
Oh, I was just gonna
you
say, I think everybody is on the internet wherever Lexicon is. Every single person is probably got their phones out and they're using them, and this is a typical problem in a huge crowd. So, yeah, Lexicon, we heard the majority of what you said. I would say at least I think some repetition there helped. But you
okay,
got to got
yeah,
some key points about this, and that is that they want Fedorov. They want Fedorov to be there long enough, as I take it, to get this stuff done, because this is all about the preservation of life and the respect for people in Ukraine, and that's what Ukraine needs. They need not be like Russians. So I really appreciate that. I am glad that you're there. It's good to have somebody on the ground. Now we're going to have to deploy like a big, huge boom with some kind of a huge antenna and amplifier on it to get through all this stuff, because it was kind of sliced and diced. So, but thank you, Lex. Kind of much appreciated. Wendy?
hey, I
yes.
think you've really got it. Yeah, your take is just right. But
Thank you. Thanks, Lexicon. Thanks so much for your report. Another, I believe you're also on the ground. Please go ahead.
That's correct. I actually got the late night sleeper train from Lviv to Kiev, so I saw the end of the rallies there. And the day before, I went around with Jonathan Fink, Silicon Curtin, being his fixer, doing interviews with the people. I think quite an interesting thing was for the first couple of days, it seemed most of the main messaging was we want Fedorov back, and that kind of then transitioned actually towards we want Sersky gone. Okay, so Sersky is gone, but that doesn't change that the opening salvo in Lviv at least was we want Fedorov back. So presumably that's what's happening. I'm going to meet a friend shortly, and I got in super early with no sleep, so I'm going to give it a skip today. I might go tomorrow. But great that there's going to be a space for international soldiers to talk about what they think. I would say of my the event I was at, it was organized by Zigazpor, and it was mostly soldiers from all the various famous units, Raid, Magyars, Azov, etc., presenting essentially lessons learned from their fights. One of the things I would say among my friends who are Ukrainian soldiers is none of them are unhappy, and one of my smarter, more well-informed friends, actually, he's been on the previous space here, Mark Shevchuk. He was like, for a long time, he's just like, I really want to see Drapatian. I really want to see Drapatian. He's so smart. He's really innovative. So I think it's interesting that the civilians, the thing that got them going was Fedorov. And yeah, they want to get rid of Sersky. And it seems, or when I see the soldiers or hear from soldiers, it's like, thank God we've got Drapati. So yeah, it seems for the soldiers, the Sersky versus Drapati was the more important thing to them. Whereas evidently the civilians are still out in the street. So Fedorov is really maybe more important to them than the soldiers. But they see different realities in their daily life, I guess. I'm not Ukrainian, it's just an observation. And if you want the episode I helped Jonathan film is up on his channel. So you can see the different, you can just see the young Ukrainians at the rally in Lviv talking about why they were there and how it had evolved over even just those 4 days in terms of what the message was. So I hope that was useful. I obviously have great Wi-Fi because I'm in my hotel. So if I go tomorrow, it'll probably be equally as bad.
Yeah, I was guessing you weren't there on the spot, but thank you very much for reporting. This is great to get these kind of like up to the moment, reporting from the center of our concerns, Ukraine and Kiev. Kiev. You pronounce it, Wendy.
I think one other observation is obviously the news came out yesterday evening. It's that Sersky had gone, and I think half of the crowd was like, "Hey!" Everyone was cheering. It's like, oh, so I guess we just go home now. So some of it went, and the others like, well, we got what we want, so we're going home. Or maybe they just took the win for the day and thought they'd come back tomorrow.
It seems like they're having fun after this. It's good to celebrate after you have a victory, and I wouldn't take that away from them. So I'm happy that they're happy, and indeed everything we've been talking about today has been about just how precious life is, and respecting it in all different ways. So this is really good. And I just want to say that there's other changes going on in the Ukraine government. And one of them is a real challenge about getting all of the things done for EU accession. And so there have been some changes along that line. I haven't put it in the nest yet, but there is the Deputy Prime Minister for European integration, and that's Taras Kachka. And he's, you'll have to read the article because I'm not going to go through this, but they have to catch up a little bit on that. And so there are challenges otherwise besides this one. But I think this military situation far outweighs anything about the EU accession at this point. So I leave it to readers. It's a good listen. Keep independent. I'll put it in the nest now. Wendy?
Thanks. And another, I find it, really, really interesting that the soldiers, the people on the ground, are mostly in support of Drapati. Those are the people we should trust, the people who know, not people who are, sitting in their armchairs in some other country, deciding what they think is best for Ukraine. So for that. And please go ahead.
So some other good news, which maybe was less high profile given everything else that's going on. In the past week, the European Defence Fund and other funding mechanisms, which is 300 million, I think, till February, maybe next year. It's 300 million euros for defence R&D. So this is developing cutting-edge technology and making new products. It's not about developing new products. It's not about making more of what you currently have. There's different money for this. This money is about creating new technology, improving the products you have, and coming up with entirely new ones. Ukraine is now part of that program. So Ukraine and European EU countries can partner up, work together to develop new capabilities, new solutions, and the EU is going to pay for that to happen. So Ukrainian companies don't make much margin because that's by law here, but the EU is going to say, you guys seem pretty innovative, so we're going to pay you to do R&D, and hopefully you will do R&D with European countries who bring something to the table. This is really important because in May this year, Ukraine took action. They decided that essentially integrating into the academic and industrial research base is now a strategic priority for Ukraine. They have appointed someone in Brave One who is solely responsible for that. So there is a named person whose job is to have effect on that. And maybe next week I'll tell you more, because I'm sitting down with him later this week, because obviously, lecture at Imperial College for 5 years. So yeah, that's a strategic priority for them. They've already had their first win getting into that program, and hey, hopefully I can help them figure out how to get some of that sweet EU R&D funding. Gonna have to sign off now, so I won't be able to answer much, but hopefully I'll speak to the guy and maybe be able to talk more next week. All right, have a good night, guys.
Fabulous, Nother. Thank you. Thanks so much. James?
Yeah, you caught me off the page.
Okay.
That would be great to hear that another. So appreciate that, and that my pile of money. Wow, yeah, there is a lot of money to be spent, and I just want to contrast that with the United States, where they've cut the cost of some of the Patriot missiles in half. How did that happen? Maybe they were overcharging first. I don't know. Anyway. They're not going to get any of that sweet pile of money. And everybody should be thinking about our future and not our profits. Because right now, this is about an existential fight, and we can't have greedy bastards go. Greed isn't all bad, because it drives you to do what's needed to get it. And in this case, the better mousetrap is what we need. It's a flying mousetrap with a bomb on it or something like that. Anyways, you get the point.
All right.
Anyway, hopefully that didn't insult you. I didn't mean to, but I did talk about greedy people. I was thinking more about some of the U.S. arms manufacturers, frankly.
No, Nother dropped. He said he had to go. So that's why he's not saying anything. I don't think he's insulted. Hope not. Anyway, we are going on the top of the hour. How long do you want to stay, James?
I do have some more time if you've got more stories. I had a couple more things to talk about.
Sure.
But I don't want to keep you from doing your thing. So again, put into the nest now is a link to Rachel's show in about an hour, and about 12 and 7 hours or so. Alan and I will be talking with Tango Whiskey, so that's good to know, and that that is also in the nest now. I posted a list of books by Evan, or translated or written by Evan Wentz, in case you're interested in following up on any of those books, the Tibetan books. Basically, all of the prefaces or introductions are done by Young. And so very good in themselves, but interesting reading. Just in case you're interested. And so let's see here. What else? Let's see here. I have some more, but I haven't put them in the nest yet. Wendy, do you have any?
I just wanted to make a couple notes about fundraising. One, Robin did a very generous match last night on Ukraine Today for War Doggo's proactive fund, and War Doggo did last on the Boom report that Andre now has the equipment he needed to complete his proof of concept that will hopefully make some kind of improvement to to Ukraine's abilities on the battlefield. So that funding is already being put to good use. And just wanted a reminder to not forget to support Ukraine because they need it. Also, one little note: Oleg Voretsky has posted that his PayPal account has been suspended. I didn't specify why, but only that it was permanent and that he will be setting up a new one in the near future. Any donations made there, he says, have been recovered. But so please, if you'd like to support Oleg Voretsky and his book or his fundraising um, options, he does a lot of fundraising for different things. Please take a look at his account to see when he has posted a new PayPal account. James?
Interesting that our people often have troubles like this, and yeah, I wonder what caused that, but I hope it all works out for them. And yeah, indeed, those look like good books. I've not gotten them. Yeah, I don't know, they're kind of kids books, so but if you do need a kids book, that they look really interesting, so I can't say better than that, truthfully. Anyway, and we have all kinds of fundraisers, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, Wendy, because everybody here, I think, gives if they can. And if you can't, just retweet things, retweet some of the fundraisers. So there's that. The couple things that I have left, let's see. One is just Keir Starmer is retiring now. And so cheers to him. He did a great job. I don't know why they kicked him out. Honestly, it felt like the Joe Biden thing, and we got Trump instead. It feels like that. But, that's up to Britain to determine. But if you want, yeah, give him a little message there and, say cheers or something like that. And thank you for what he's done. Another thing is that our
Wait.
uh-huh.
Larry the cat caught a mouse in his honor. James, you got to mention that.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, wow, I missed that part. Wow. Okay, man. See, everybody loves him, even the cat. So that's good. Sign of trust there. Okay, then there is this. Strangely enough, FBI Director Kash Patel is planning on a trip to Russia in mid-October, and he's meeting with the FSB, which it just reminds me that Trump isn't the only one. So there's that. And then back to Britain now for something different, entirely different. Russian warship conducted live fire drills off of the British coast. And now this is unnecessary. It is intimidation, and sort of wish they would just fire back. But they're not intending to hit anybody, but they risk people's lives. They've almost hit, civilian vessels before doing the same kind of stunt. And this is abhorrent, I would say. And it goes against what I think should be international norms is if you're going to go do this kind of thing, go out in the empty ocean somewhere and do it, and stay the hell out of places like this. But they're Russia, and they think they're special, and they think they can do it anywhere. And I think we should keep leading them back to the truth, which is there's nothing special about Russia except how rotten they are. Wendy.
Well, doing it out in the middle of the ocean would have no intimidation potential, James. So they think that they're like intimidating or something, I think at this point everybody knows that that's kind of a joke, but that seems to be the goal.
I think that's the whole point. And so let's see. I think that's really all I had ready today. So I don't want to go out over my skis or whatever. So anything else you've got, or maybe no hands. So this might be a good. Go ahead.
Sorry, James, I didn't unmute my mic. No, I posted something from Kaya Callis. She says that they've put some more pressure on the Shadow Fleet, that the oil tanker My South Star, suspected of sailing under false flag, had been boarded on July 20th. This is something that she just posted. So good for them for dealing with the Shadow Fleet in ways other than what Ukraine does with their physical sanctions. So I'm really glad that Europe is also putting more pressure on the Russian Shadow Fleet. James?
I'm sorry, I got deeply distracted there. My bad. But I had to respond to something. Anyway, sorry. I can't even comment on what you said. So, and then I guess a closing thing that I saw that was this was Alex Rufuglo, who had the chance to ask Secretary Rubio, one of his hats at least, whether or not. Whether or not he would press Lavrov on Ukraine when the two met. And, he said, well, there are some things that they can cooperate with Russia on. And he didn't really give any kind of resounding, like, go Ukraine kind of message, which is consistent. And it just, again, doubling down on this idea that it is not just Trump. There's a whole gang, it appears. And I get realism, the idea that you have to deal with real threats and sometimes you have to compromise with people you don't like. But I don't see just that. I see them pulled toward what Russia's doing, which is deeply unfortunate, especially Trump, but not only Trump.
I agree. It's one thing to have to deal with an entity like Russia. It's another one to actively seek out ways to cooperate and do things together. Who needs a genocidal maniac? So I agree. One other thing I posted in the nest that would be good to look at is in the last day or so, Kaylin Robertson has posted an interview with Robert Brovdi, Magyar. Both of them get around a lot, so it's an excellent interview. There are a lot of good quotes from Magyar, as there often are. He basically says they will isolate Crimea, and that Russia is essentially apt. So please take a look at that one. James?
That was indeed good. They are fucked was the exact quote. Sorry, I got it now. I have to put up the 18 plus up, and never mind. It's too late now. But yeah, it is a good episode, or I'm sorry, interview, and it's better, I think, than the Siersky interview from about a month ago that I saw. So yeah. Anyway, you know where this is going now. It's toward the future, and I think it's going to be all about Ukrainian victory. And I'm excited to see how the United States is going to actually switch and decide that they have to be on the winning side. And so, to that end, call your Congress people, remind them that there's a bill there that they can they can support, and that is this Ukraine Support Act. Now, this has already passed the House. It's getting on the calendar in the Senate, and so call your senators. Give them hell if you have to, and mention this Ukraine Support Act and get that thing passed. So maybe Mary would like to follow up on that and do a better job. But this is such an important thing for the United States, for Ukraine, and for Europe. This isn't that big a deal, frankly, but I think it's important for us, Wendy.
Most definitely, James. Well, I am out of major things to discuss. Are you ready to go, James?
Yeah, I think I am. I was just bringing up a few things here because we always like to do this, and we like to talk about what's up next. Besides Jameson, Ms. Jameson, I should say, Rachel Jameson, um, in about a little under an hour now. She'll come up. So that sounds like a really good discussion. And I think it's an important one because attracting volunteers is an important thing. Russia's trying to do it. They just lie to people. And I know Ukraine isn't just lying to people. So that's important. After that, at 7 p.m., again, Alan and I will be speaking with Tango Whiskey Dog is his full username here on Twitter. It should be interesting. And then after that, we've got Booms and Woe with Mockers and Brent at 2 a.m. So that's what's going on Volya Radio. And looks like also so far, the genocide in Ukraine crew, looks like they're going to do something tomorrow evening. So, anyways, there we go.
And James, I just wanted to say, when I was in Ukraine in May, I did have an opportunity to meet a couple of foreign fighters, one from the U.S. and one from Great Britain. And what struck me was their incredible dedication to their quote guys, the Ukrainians that they fight and work with. They were just incredibly dedicated to them and to the cause, and that is a wonderful thing to see. They're not people kidnapped by Russians and abused by the other soldiers. They're people who care deeply about what they're doing and the people they're doing it with. So again, that's really great to listen to them.
It's really good to hear, Wendy. Well, then, I think we're there. So I will say Slava Ukraini.
Your own Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Smert Boraham.
Smert Boraham. And we also say Povachamus. And we also say we'll see you next time. And wherever you are in the world, have a good day. And we'll talk with you later. And thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking. It's so helpful. And now share and help defeat Russia by doing what you can. So thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for a great discussion. Babachina.